Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Astronaut Scholarship Foundation American Dream Makers Entrepreneur Showcase. I am Lisa Stott, the Vice Chair of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation Board of Directors. I'm also an astronaut scholar, having received the scholarship from 1987 to 90 while studying mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech. And I'm an entrepreneur, but you'll hear more about that later in today's program. Today, you will hear from 10 astronaut scholars who own businesses or are in the process of starting a business. The group ranges from current year scholars to those who received their scholarship years ago and have a bit more experience behind them. So before we get started, I have a few housekeeping remarks. Any attendees can submit their questions for presenters in the Q&A box on the bottom toolbar. If you wish to send celebratory messages like, hey, great presentation to one of our scholars, you can do so in the chat. Attendees will not be on microphone or video during the event. And so after each scholar presentation, I will be moderating a question and answer session using the questions you submit through the Q&A box. And after today's program, if you want to get in touch with any of the presenters and you happen to miss their contact information, you can reach them through the ASF office. So before we hear from the scholars, let me give you a brief introduction to the American Dream Makers program. I'm going to share my screen to do that. So, a little background, and let me minimize my this part of my screen here. The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation's mission statement is to aid the United States in retaining its world leadership in technology and innovation by supporting the very best and brightest scholars in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM fields, while commemorating the legacy of America's pioneering astronauts. ASF was founded in 1984 by the 6 surviving Mercury 7 astronauts, Betty Grissom, who was widow of the 7th, Dr. Bill Douglas, and Henry Landworth. They decided way back then to support all STEM majors, and they started by awarding 7 scholarships in 1986, each one valued at $1,000. We've come a long way since then. For this 2020 academic year, we are awarding 56 scholarships nationwide, to 41 different university partners. ASF definitely stands on the shoulders of giants, as we were founded by the Mercury 7. ASF provides much more than a scholarship. We provide comprehensive scholarship development and enrichment programs to all of our scholarship winners, and that includes the current year and all the way through the lifetime of our alumni. You can see here on this screen a number of the programs that we provide, from mentoring to professional development, travel grants when we get a chance to travel again and see each other in person. We do networking and facilitate internships, provide recognition to our scholars. And what we're focused on today is our American Dream Makers program. So what is American Dream Makers? Well, we empower and connect astronaut scholars who are pursuing entrepreneurial ventures, developing new products and processes, commercializing innovations, or need support with cutting-edge research that might lead to one of these entrepreneurial ventures. Our role at ASF is to establish relationships and provide access to people and resources, facilitate the opportunities for our scholars to present their inventions, business plans, proposed ventures, research proposals, and other ideas and initiatives to people who might be interested in helping them. We provide very highly customized support to meet their specific needs, and it's different for each scholar. It's our newest program at ASF. It was only launched last year in 2019. So what's in a name? Why did we name it this? Well, the American dream is the belief that anyone, regardless of background, can attain their own version of success through hard work, risk-taking, sacrifice, persistence, and resilience. For many people, the American dream involves owning a business or being self-employed. And makers has become a common term. Makers are people who are active creators of new products, processes, and businesses. They are those who design, craft, create, invent, and fabricate. So our scholars are pursuing the American dream, and they are the makers. ASF and our Innovation Corps are helping them make their American dream come true. So our American Dream Makers program really has two groups of people involved in it. Our Innovation Corps, which is a group of experienced and trusted advisors. They're entirely volunteer, and they represent all STEM fields because, as I said at the beginning, from day one, the Mercury 7 decided to support all STEM fields. We're always seeking new members for the Innovation Corps. So if you get excited about what you hear today in this presentation, I hope that you'll contact ASF to see how you might become a member of our Innovation Corps and help our scholars with their entrepreneurial dreams. And then, of course, we have Astronaut Scholar participants. And as I mentioned, this is open to current scholars as well as alumni. They're eligible at any age and at any stage of their business development with any type of business or idea. And you're going to hear from a bunch of them today, from current scholars to experienced alumni. Today, we've had, again, we just launched last year, we've had 5 participants so far. We've had Brad Caponegro, who was developing a laser cutting service for new types of materials. He participated last year. The next 3 on this list, Jessica, Ashley, and Ben, you're going to hear from today, so I won't preempt their presentations by telling you what they're up to. And then we have a participant right now who needs to remain confidential because the person is working on developing an engineering consulting business and isn't quite ready for that news to go public yet. This slide shows you some of our Innovation Corps members to date. We have Astronaut Scholars, we have Astronaut Charlie Precourt, and we have a number of business professionals who are just excited about the entrepreneurial space and helping our scholars. We leave it to NASA, SpaceX, Boeing, and United Launch Alliance, and some others to launch rockets into space. At ASF, we're in the business of launching innovation. So thank you for your attention to that brief introduction. Let's move on to our next presenter of the day. His name is Ben Toms. Ben is the founder of Intersphere, a company that's focused on mitigating weather and climate risk through their innovative advances in forecasting technology. He received the Astronaut Scholarship in 2015 and recently graduated with a PhD from a top 10 globally ranked program in atmospheric science with an emphasis in computational science. And if you'll bear with me, I will make him the host. Well, I don't seem to have that functionality right now. All right, here we go. Making Ben the host.
Okay, let's see here. All right, I'll share this. All right, am I live? Cool, I'll assume I am. So yeah, hey, I'm Ben Toms. So thanks for the introduction, Lisa. Yeah, I just wrapped up my PhD a month ago, actually, and in the midst of that was working with the Dreammakers program to start this company. So their advice was really critical in all of this. The company's called Intersphere. Here's our tagline: weather and climate risk, not a chance. So I'm actually going to use this opportunity to share my pitch deck. So a lot of this is the pitch deck. And then if anybody has questions about anything else, just feel free to ask right after or via email. So the crux of the problem that Intersphere is trying to address is, I'd assume most people in this room acknowledge that the climate is changing and it's changing fairly rapidly. And we're already witnessing the consequences as a society. So this is actually a picture of a wildfire that started about 60 miles west of my house. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, in northern Colorado, and ended up about 2 miles from my house. And so this is extreme wildfire behavior that hasn't been observed in modern history, at least in northern Colorado. And I'd say I'm a pretty well-protected person from climate change. So this is a very imminent problem that we're going to have to face. Now, we can talk about climate change and all the problems that are going along with that, but regardless, weather will continue to impact society, right? So even if the climate weren't changing, there will be these extreme events like this severe thunderstorm. You can have heat waves, flooding, things like that that are going to impact society. So there are these two components to weather and climate risk that you have to balance. And here is the problem. So if you're focused on weather or climate, people have started to address that, and I'll touch on that in a bit. But if you're interested in these timescales where weather and climate occur at the same time, people have conventionally thought that those timescales are extremely difficult, if not impossible, to make predictions for, because it's difficult to disentangle climate change and weather. So this is actually why I started the company. I invented some technology on my own time outside of my PhD, but during my PhD in that same period of my life, and I based the company off of that tech. So in premise, what happens is, if you're thinking of weather and climate prediction, you can split it into three distinct regimes. There's this regime of weather from 1 day to 1 month. 1 month is actually fairly generous. It typically goes out to 2 weeks, and then you can't make forecasts. These are the types of forecasts that you might get on your phone through weather alerts for like severe thunderstorms or, high and low temperatures, individual snowstorms, rain events, things like that. Then you have this climate time scale on the right side over here. These are the things that people are looking at climate projections for, longer than 10 years, 10 to 100 years down the road of warming trends, drying trends, things like that. But there's this section in the middle where you have this overlay of weather and climate. And so you have the trends associated with the long-term climate change, but you also have these weather patterns that you have to take into account. And so this is where my competition slots in. So folks have, of course, really tried to nail down this weather timescale. So on the left-hand side over here, you might be able to get forecasts from people like AccuWeather or even the governments on severe weather upcoming, record temperatures upcoming, things like that. And there are a lot of companies out there that are trying to assess issues associated with long-term climate change, like warming trends, sea level rise, things of that nature, right? But there's this gap in the middle, and I showed you what was there on the slide before this, but this is Innersphere's focus. So it's this time scale of 1 month to 10 years that's really critical for organizational preparation for the next few years, even individuals if you're planning, vacations, things like that, or corporations. And so what we're really focused on is we can make these forecasts for seasonal patterns 1 to 2 years in advance. So some examples here are, we can tell you whether there will be abnormally cold or warm winters a year from now, whether there will be drought conditions 2 summers from now. And then as you get further and further away into the future, you have to kind of spread this period that you're making forecasts for out in order to retain forecast skill and accuracy. And so, we would be able to say, for example, in Oklahoma, if you're an agriculture person there, if you're farming wheat or alfalfa, we can tell you whether it's going to be abnormally wet or dry in the latter part of the decade. So that's the type of idea that we're working on here. So this is the big idea, right? So the point of Innersphere is that we're focused on developing technology that helps organizations plan for weather and climate risk horizons on timescales of months to years. And that's something that hasn't really been able to be done before, at least in an accurate sense. So this is introducing a new area of risk mitigation. So how we're doing that is this technology that I created on my own time during my PhD. And it's the first prediction system in the world that has been validated and publicly accepted, at least. There are a lot of people that try to make these claims, of capable, that can accurately predict weather and climate across these multi-year timescales, right? And so one of the issues with making statements like this is people are like, okay, cool. A lot of people can make a model, but how do I know that I can trust it? So one of the critical aspects to it is that it can actually tell you the exact odds that its forecast will be correct. So given the same conditions of the climate system now, if we make a forecast for 2 years down the road, if it saw those exact same patterns 100 times, what % of the time would it get that forecast correct? So what I'm going to show you here is a quick demo of that. On the left-hand side is an example of moving through time from 1980 through present day of these annual temperature patterns. And that's our forecast across the entire globe. And then on the right-hand side is are the odds, or the likelihood that this forecast will verify for each of these locations. So you'll see as you move through time, on the left-hand side, the blue is colder patterns and the red are warmer patterns. These patterns shift across the globe. And then these regions on the right-hand side, the regions that are darker, we have less confidence in our forecast, and the regions that are more yellow, we have more confidence. So then if you're a stakeholder, right, if you have assets all over the globe or even just in Chicago, you can look at these forecasts that we're giving out, assess whether we have a high confidence in that forecast being accurate, so then you can look at your own risk profile and decide if you're going to take actions based on that forecast. So yeah, I showed the temperature patterns, but we can also forecast precipitation. That's obviously very tangible for humans, and ocean temperature. That's really relevant for fisheries. And then some integrated metrics like drought risk for hydroclimate, and then heating and cooling degree days for the energy sector. And we can do this across seasons, years, and then as you get further into the future, you can't pinpoint forecasts for individual seasons. So then you start forecasting across, what do the winters look like from 2025 through 2030, a trend across those 5 specific years. So we've been working so far with people in the natural resource management sectors, with water resource managers and folks in the mining industry actually have a lot of dependence on water resources as well. So this is a really valuable market to the US economy. So the baseline estimate is that this offers the US economy $10 billion per year. And a more aggressive assessment would say it's closer to 100 billion. We've also been having conversations with folks in the renewable energy sector. So, if they can know whether there will be less wind or more wind, or even for solar panels, if there's going to be sunnier or cloudier conditions over an entire year, they can assess how their financials work out, if they can expand their facilities, things like that. And then also, if you're interested in knowing whether folks in the United States will use more or less energy across an entire year or season, that type of information has tended to be useful so far. And then these are just some other examples of industries. So one of the advantages to this being a globally scalable product that we're offering is that we can take cases from specific markets and then, using our base product, hone in forecasts specific to that market. So these are 4 of the markets that we've been focusing on so far, but there are plenty more out there. And if anybody listening has any ideas, I'd be happy to hear them. So this is the next claim. This technology can predict weather and climate anywhere on Earth. So if you have assets anywhere on the globe, we can help you assess your climate and weather related risk on these 1 month to 10-year timescales. So I already showed you that there are times when forecasts have more confidence than others, but this is the most accurate forecast product on the market. And so if you get forecasts from us, regardless of whether that forecast has a high confidence of being accurate or not, you can know that that information is the best information available to you. So I'm going to wrap this up with a little bit of info about me. With companies like this, one of the issues is there are a lot of big claims about futuristic novel products, but there has to be some trust. So I'm not an ego-driven person by any means, but I do have a lot of experience in this artificial intelligence and machine learning landscape for weather and climate. I just wrapped up my PhD from one of the top atmospheric science programs in the world, and had a lot of backing from people that had a lot of trust in the work that I was doing. So I also own all the rights to this technology, so IP claims are not an issue. Yeah, I mean, the world's changing very quickly from the climate change perspective. Our technology is advancing very rapidly to help mitigate that risk. So if you're interested in talking with me about collaborations, investment, if you think that we can help you manage your weather and climate risk, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. So here's this last slide. This is my contact information, ben.toms@innersphere.earth. And if you're interested in seeing our website, it's this innersphere.earth web address. All right, there we go. Thanks. I will pass this back to you, Lisa.
Okay, we do have a few questions that have come in.
Okay.
First one's kind of a fun one. How is this different from the Farmer's Almanac?
Ah, yeah, that's a funny question. So the Farmer's Almanac is not based in science. It's kind of this prospective thing of, uh, you know, it's yeah. So that's a fairly controversial thing in the world of atmospheric science STEM because they make these claims from being able to make forecasts, but if you actually assess their accuracy, they're no better than, if not oftentimes worse than random chance. So it's very speculative and not really based in our current understanding of how the weather and climate system evolves.
Okay. Someone else has asked, how can we be confident that it works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So people that I've been working with, one of the cool things about this technology that I made is it's this idea of, and this isn't a proprietary idea, but a physics guided machine learning. So you can help the AI actually make its decisions using our current state of knowledge on physics, right? It's pretty cool. And so what that does is it allows us to not use the entire historical record to train these models. So we have data from 1980 through present day that our machine learning models haven't ever seen before. And so we can go back and verify the accuracy of our models on that 40-year period to make sure that it's going to be accurate going into the future. Yeah, so that's where the confidence comes from.
Okay. And I think your presentation may have answered this a little bit later after this question came in, but how do you propose to generate revenues?
Yeah, so that's a big question, of course, too. So one of the core aspects is because it's this global forecasting model, people can buy into a subscription service for actually having access to that entire global perspective on our forecast. So that's the base cash flow, monthly revenue. But one of the cool things is because there's that base global product, like I mentioned, we can hone in for each individual market. And so then there's more specialized consulting services on the side that cost a little bit more money.
Okay, and another question, how did you find a balance between developing this and pursuing your PhD?
Yeah, there wasn't. No. Yeah, I mean, I really focused on using all of my time carefully and making sure that when I was focused on my PhD work, I was totally focused on that. And then as soon as I went home in the evening, I worked out or whatever so I could reshift my focus on this. Yeah, just trying to make sure I was focused all the time.
Okay, another question has come in. It says, nice presentation, Ben. Are you working with the commodities market businesses? Thinking of companies like Cargill who participate in the market as well as having various businesses around the world.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I haven't specifically worked with folks interested in commodities yet. I've had some conversations with people in hedge funds actually that manage commodities risk, but it seems like this is a very viable thing for them too. So, I mean, if you know people that are interested in, this sort of forecasting product for commodities, I'd be happy to talk with them to figure out how it could help them.
Great, and we appreciate that connection.
Yeah.
Another person has asked, why wouldn't this be a government project providing info to all businesses?
Yeah, that's a good point. So at the end of my PhD, originally I was focused on being a professor and staying in academia, and that would have been the more governmental route. But there's some problems that can be rapidly accelerated in the private sector, and this is one of them that I saw a lot of potential. The funding landscape for government projects is very different than in the private sector, where if in the private sector you have a project that can have a lot of immediate impact, it will receive a lot of funding very quickly and a lot of backing. And so that's my mission for Innersphere, to make sure that that backing comes very quickly, so that these benefits can get out to people more quickly than they otherwise would if it came from the total public sector perspective.
Okay, great. And another question, should the Weather Channel buy this technology?
Okay. No, I don't think the Weather Channel could buy it, because I don't think, the everyday person, including myself, would really care about these forecasts from my phone. So I think the weather company is focused on, if somebody gets a ping on their phone, will they care about that specific ping? So I think if people are interested in like seasonal forecasts for their skiing habits or something like that, you know, that's something that the everyday individual could use for this. But I mean, look, if the weather company is interested in expanding this and getting this to all their customers, then I'd love to have a conversation with them. Maybe I'm totally wrong. So I guess never say never. Yeah.
All right. One person just made a comment, it's not a question, that goes back to the Farmer's Almanac question. They said it is for America only.
Okay. Yeah, that's another thing that's different. I'm
And
very
then,
opinionated on Farmer's Almanac, so I don't step on any toes there. But yeah.
How big is your company? That was another question asked.
Yeah. So right now, yeah. So I started this company fully right out of my PhD, and one of the complicating factors with doing this in a PhD is I was under a contract, a fellowship that I couldn't make any secondary money, or they'd invalidate that contract. So I'm the first full employee for the company, and I have 3 contractors that I'm working with that are also collaborating with me and helping me optimize my model. So it's ripe for growth at this stage.
All right, great. That looks like that's the last of the questions that have come in.
Cool.
And so thank you so much for a great presentation and your great answers.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for setting this up, Lisa.
And now it'll be my pleasure to introduce our next presenter. Dr. Andrew Jones is the founder and CEO of Activated Research Company, LLC, which develops products for the analytical chemistry industry. He has a PhD in chemical engineering from UC Berkeley and chemistry and chemical engineering bachelor degrees from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where he was the recipient of the Astronaut Scholarship from 2007 to 2008. And I'd also like to mention that Andrew Jones was one of the members of the American Dreamers Task Force that helped to put this whole program together. With that, Andrew, I'm going to make you the host. And you're on.
All right. Perfect. If I did that correctly, you guys should be able to hear me and see my screen. Look good, Lisa?
Yes, it does.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction, Lisa, and hello to everyone on the line. This is such a fun way for us all to connect and share our experiences. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Andrew Jones, and today I want to tell you a little bit about my company and the products we've developed in the chemical analysis space. There is a problem with the way drugs are being developed today. And that problem is uncertainty, which has led to wasted time, wasted money, and less effective research. And we've heard it directly from the scientists doing drug development. They cannot give you an accurate assessment of purity until it is too late. In the process of manufacturing drugs, there are always byproducts or chemicals that come along for the ride. And in early drug development, scientists estimate the amount of these byproducts using chemical analysis. Now, the problem is that these detectors are very bad at estimating amounts, and they can be off by a factor of up to 1 million. So when a scientist estimates during drug development that the concentration is within some sort of safe limit, they may find out later that once the drug has scaled up, that the actual concentration of the byproduct is way above the safe limit, and it's actually toxic to humans. And this seems to be what happened recently with Zantac and other NDMA-containing drugs that were recently recalled by the FDA. Now, the holy grail would be a detector that gives an accurate estimate of every single byproduct during drug development. So in short, we have these wonderful scientists who have made these wonderful new drug candidates, but they are forced to choose between a myriad of detectors that will each give them a different value for purity. It may be 95% pure by NMR or 90% pure by mass spectrometry. Which one is correct? Well, the answer is none of them, because they are all estimates at this point in time. They're not measuring actual values. So what if we could design a detector that measures chemicals and impurities accurately with a universal response that is simple and robust? We consistently hear from scientists working in pharma that a universal detector would change the paradigm of how drug development is done. I'm proud to present the world's first carbon selective detector for Hplc, which solves this problem. It utilizes laser-based photocatalysis and flame ionization technology to give a uniform response to non-volatile analytes. The Solvere technology is the latest addition to ARC's analytical product lineup, built on a platform of catalytic reactor innovation. Our products have been helping scientists simplify their analyses for over 5 years, and in some cases have made previously impossible analyses possible. So what this means with the Solvere in practice is that whether scientists are looking at sugars like table sugar or proteins, they can now get a similar linear response for those and any other non-volatile compounds. And what this means for drug development is a greater amount of certainty, leading to faster drug development cycles, less waste, and ultimately, hopefully, better, safer drugs. I want to quickly discuss some of our other products, since the Solvere is a new product we're launching at the end of this year. The Polyarc is really what started this company and started everything for us. The Polyarc is a two-stage microreactor that gives scientists a universal detector for gas chromatography, and it's currently available from Agilent Technologies. The Polyarc is solving major pain points in chemical analysis at companies like Dow Chemical, Renewable Energy Group, and ExxonMobil by minimizing calibration and giving scientists enhanced capabilities in the lab. Now, we sell the Polyarc into a variety of industries, from oil and gas to food and flavor and chemicals. The Polyarc is available globally and can be found in over 30 countries. About 3 years ago, we launched the world's smallest methanizer reactor and started a revolution into how carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide is analyzed at the laboratory level. And about 2 years ago, we started a collaboration with the Partnership for Clean Competition to improve the reactors used for urine analysis. We have built the world's first low-temperature reactor to speed up urine testing in sport. And of course, the latest innovation from the ARC team is our groundbreaking detector for Hplc known as the Solvere. We are also innovating with products that enable low-cost, two-dimensional GC analysis. Here's an example of that. With GC by GC, scientists can gain an additional dimension of separation that gives them greater insights into what is in a sample. So this picture here is data taken from a biodiesel sample using ARC's low-cost stop flow modulator. And you can see the different levels and types of compounds available there. There's over 1,000 peaks or analytes in there. And the last technology I want to discuss is still in research and development, but we are seeing very promising results. Persistent forever chemicals, as they're called, have contaminated nearly every inch of the globe and have been linked to cancer, reproductive, and immune system harm and other diseases. Now, these were chemicals and byproducts of the production of nonstick coatings. There was a recent Hollywood movie about this called Dark Water. And current technology, unfortunately, is unable to quantify the nearly 6,000 different compounds. So we still don't really know how much is out there. We do, however, know it's essentially everywhere. We have developed a microreactor that can convert these chemicals for easier, more uniform detection by mass spectrometry. And we're currently working on validating and subsequently rolling out the technology to hopefully improve the health and safety of our planet and the life on our planet. So I realize I've shown you a lot in a short amount of time, but I want to close by telling you a little bit about who we are. So Activated Research Company, or ARC for short, is a product development company founded in 2014 with a mission to make chemical analysis easier for scientists. We're located here in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I'd love to say sunny Eden Prairie, but it's snowy Eden Prairie right now. And we are constantly working on innovating in the world of catalysis. I'm excited to share our latest innovation, the Solvere, with everyone here today, as it is being launched very, very soon. We're currently looking to expand our technology into more labs in the pharma and food space. So my one ask for everyone here on the ASF panel is that if you know of anyone in the analysis world, please connect us. We would love to talk to you. And I realize that many of you may not personally own a gas or liquid chromatograph, but for those who do work with those, please keep ARC in mind for your current and future chemical analysis needs. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for their attention, and especially thank the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation for this wonderful opportunity and the organizers of this ADM event. So with that, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
And if you could unshare your screen, Andrew, I'll come back on with you.
Yep.
We're just having a question or two come in. I used to work in environmental quality air emissions testing. We use chromatographs in that work, but this was years ago. Are your more advanced machines, do they have a role in air quality emissions analysis?
Yes, some. A lot of those are EPA methods that are specific, specific technology that is usually pretty dated, but there are some methods that we do work in. I'm having trouble finding, here we go. Let's minimize the, I don't know why it's minimized my screen. I don't have my controls up. Apologize.
Well, while you're doing that, there's a couple questions in. Do you see a role for computational chemistry in developing your future technologies?
Oh, here we go. Yes, we do. I actually did density functional theory work during my PhD to optimize catalysts, and that's definitely something we look at as a way to improve our catalytic technology. Let me see. Did that work to stop sharing my screen, Lisa?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
And another question: what is your biggest challenge?
Our biggest challenge is new business development. So finding customers, collaborators, champions. It's a very interesting market space for analytical chemistry because there's so many different unique application areas. And so finding focus and finding customers that are willing to be early adopters in new technology is a struggle.
Okay, looks like that's all the questions we have in for right now. So thank you very much, Andrew, for that great presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, another one just came in. How many people are in your sales department?
I'm not off the hook yet. We have 3 people.
Okay.
In sales.
Great. And I haven't been identifying the question askers, but there is someone who says, please feel free to reach out to me regarding business development. And it's a attendee named Scott Pleasance. So I'm sure that ASF can put you in touch with him after the event.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Scott.
And okay, here's one. I guess we need to give it a few minutes because it takes some time to formulate the questions. Can you elaborate about your research collaborations?
Yeah, we've had a number of collaborations over the years, some with NASA through their subcontractors, KBR Wiley, also with the Partnership for Clean Competition, and also some universities through government grants. And so we're a product development company, always looking for collaborators. We know we can't do it alone, can't change the world alone. So we are always looking for great collaborators and people to work with, and we're happy to help other people as well.
Great. Okay, now I really do think that's it. So again, thank you. And with that, I will move on to our next presenter today, which is going to be Jessica Blomberg. Dr. Jessica Blomberg received the scholarship in 1996 and 1997 at the University of Central Florida. She's the owner of Quality CMC Consulting and provides drug development services to pharma, biotech, and medical device companies, has done so for almost 8 years. She embodies the entrepreneurial spirit and recently joined the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation Board of Directors earlier this year. So with that, Jessica, I will make you the host. Let's see, there we go. And you're good to go. You're good to go.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I'm going to be talking today about a couple projects that I have. Oops, maybe not. Hold on one second, my screen show. All right. I received the ASF scholarship in 1996 and 1998 while attending UCF with majoring in chemistry and undergrad research in biochem. I then went to Duke University, where I worked on my PhD, specializing in analytical chemistry. I stayed in the Raleigh-Durham for about 10 years, working for small to mid-sized companies. And in January 2013, so almost 8 years ago, I formed Quality CMC Consulting, primarily because there's a lot of volatility in our research areas, and I wanted to be my own boss. Now, my favorite projects are those that I could provide merger and acquisition support. Those are primarily due diligence type of activities. So if they're in-licensing, out-licensing, or if they're trying to go ahead and acquire a company. I do hold multiple patents in drug design. And in 2020, I did receive 2 pieces of good news. I received the Triangle Business Journal Award, Life Science Consultant of the Year. And as Lisa said, I was also nominated to the ASF board. So you might be asking, what does CMC mean? So it stands for Chemistry Manufacturing Controls. Below is examples of different drug product types I've worked with. So all of you have probably taken an over-the-counter drug, or you've been to a doctor and they've given you a script. Well, then you've in essence have touched really what I've done. So the CMC is how a drug is made. So what is that active ingredient? What inactive ingredients do you need to make that drug product? What tests do you need to do in order to establish the acceptance criteria? So what purity do you need of that drug in order for there to be clinical efficacy? And how do you have to store that drug and for how long? So that expiration date that you see at the bottom of your bottle. CMC, Quality CMC Consulting, we pride ourselves on focusing on established and emerging clients and really helping them with having flexible and phase-appropriate support so that they can make compliant decisions that are science-driven and right first time. In that meaning, the worst thing that you can do as you're developing a drug or a product is have to repeat a study. That takes extra resources that you can't plan for. So what we can do is we can come in and align our CMC activities with the business objectives and help mentor the executive coaches, and especially what it takes to have a virtual drug development program. And then if they need an outsourcing partner, we can help them find that partner that's right for them. And then we can get down into that details that we just talked about. So what are the tests they need? What's that acceptance criteria? What is that regulatory compliance roadmap that you need in order to have a successful drug? And that roadmap that you build has to be built with the client, built upon their risk and their expectations of that asset. So how did I become successful? Well, in the past 8 years, I've grown this business through my connections, network, and reputation. For 10 years, I worked in the industry and I worked in virtual drug development. So I partnered a lot with global contract manufacturing labs and manufacturing organizations. And locally, for 7 years, I volunteered with the North Carolina Pharmaceutical Discussion Group that is part of the American Association of Pharmaceutical Scientists. And we would host various lunch and learns or even winter events where we would put on educational seminars to educate the community. My personal education also, I like to keep on top of that. So I took a 5-month regulatory course at Duke. And I also try to attend any conference I can to really understand the world of drug development and the various paradigms that you have depending on the treatment. I work on building successful relationships. And I think the biggest thing you can do as a consultant is always work with integrity. The other big thing on becoming successful is trusting your gut. As scientists, we're really geared towards our brain, right? Making very practical, logical decisions. But to be a successful entrepreneur, you also have to build that gut instinct. So that's something that's really carried me through, and I'm polishing it as I go through. And believing in yourself. It's an independent consultant, so you're independent, just even in the title. So when you come to a client, you really need to know what you bring to the table in order to make them successful. So steps that I take in order to help a client succeed. There's 3 basic items: understand, design, and execute. So when I first go into a project, I look at their company business model and their growth strategy. Are they looking to do this internal, or are they looking to do this external and leverage heavily on contract organizations? Are they looking for this asset to do a merger and acquisition, say flip it at a phase 2, or are they trying to take this all the way through commercial? And what is their budget, and what does that budget runway look like throughout the development time period? And then design activities, this is when you want to align the asset goals and resources. So that regulatory pathway that we have, working on that, how you develop that pathway for an oncology drug versus say a chronic pain pill will be very different. You want to also make sure that that client has flexible systems that they're working with that enable them to make quick scientific decisions. Large pharma, it does not have this typically. And when you go to a smaller mid-sized company, you don't need to echo that that system in yours. You can really tailor it so you can be as flexible as possible. Then if they are doing outsourcing relationships, so helping them select that right fit vendor, that they're going to be their external partners, and also at the same time that they internally keep that product knowledge to themselves, and then they grow that within. When you execute, you want to deliver and bring that baby home. So at the end of the day, if that product is not approved by the regulatory bodies, there's no drug. If it's not efficacious or safe, there is no product. So that's kind of like the end goals. Also, are you going to take that asset and then try to support a due diligence assessment for an M&A, or do you have to worry about continuous life cycle management? This is a copy of some logos of some clients I've worked with over the years. And the impact what the American Dreammakers and the advisors in particular have helped me with. As Lisa said, I joined as an advisor in 2020. I actually helped us also grow the advisory board. So I brought in Wayne and Vivian and Mike, and to kind of help round out the services and areas that we can support. Andrew, who just talked with ARC, I'm also a strategic advisor to him. And Ashley Hayden, who's talking after me, is with Color Stems, and she helped design my logo. So the one you see in the bottom right-hand corner, she worked with that with me this year. I also help recruit other scholars to join. The advisors, particularly Lisa, helped me optimize my company. The logo, Ashley helped me design. The website is very minimal. Honestly, I did not advertise for my business until I won the Triangle Business Award earlier this year. And so that is an area I could use some help in. And also with the insurance and financials that Lisa and Wayne both helped with. So I have the professional liability insurance that I picked up. I removed my discount rates. Primarily if you go into a doctor's office, you don't ask them to give you a discount rate. Your time is your time. And the tax shelter establishment has been huge. It has actually let me keep the revenue I'm making, which is quite nice. Now, another completely different topic than the quality CMC consulting is I did help out with the American Dreammakers with their pilot program last year in 2019. And this concept was called the body response diet. Now, a lot of times when people have an autoimmune condition or they have some other clinical symptoms, one avenue they frequently go to is their diet. Food, in its essence, is a drug. And so this idea was an app based upon artificial intelligence, which enabled you to have behavioral learning by correlating triggers, your body triggers, to what food or environmental exposures that you were having. And so this app really treated food exposure like drug exposure. So I thought it combined both of my worlds together. I had multiple sessions with the core. I met with Lisa, Karen, and Mike, and we came out, they helped me map out the idea and helped me really understand what requirements I would need to get this off the ground. And in 2019, I was recovering from a broken leg. And so that and keeping my other business running was my main focus because I had existing clients. And also the financial resource requirement was just too great. And so I put that on the table for a little bit. So to help me build for the future and building success for everyone on the phone, if you're thinking about how you can help, there's different areas that I could suggest. For quality CMC consulting, it will be website assistance, PR help, marketing presence I need. And earlier I spoke about my favorite projects. So kind of getting in more on that strategic development of that drug or that asset. And so helping out more on M&A activities. So if there is a drug developer on the phone or a VC equity firm that you might need this help with, please let me know. For the body response diet, this I would like to help build some collaborations with some machine learning resources and also funding. So I just want to thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate it, giving a little note about my companies and my ideas. For more information, please contact me at info@qualitycmcconsulting.com. And I thank you so much.
Great presentation, Jess. We do have a couple of questions coming in. Is the idea with your app that you talked about, is the idea to log what you ate and how you feel?
Yes, that is exactly the idea. And then it would have, for that body response part too, it would automatically come up and ask you like, what's going on with you? How are you feeling? And if you're not feeling a certain way, that loads it in. So then they can correlate a trend to what your intake is, to what you're eating. Sometimes it's all about thresholds with people. And so sometimes it's really hard because it might not be until day 3 or day 4, it's the exposure that you have. And that's why sometimes people can't correlate to what they're eating. And the diets out there are all over and they conflict each other too. So it makes it really convoluted to go into it and kind of understand it.
And a follow-up question to that, are there similar apps available now?
There are some apps that are more tailored though, like if you're trying to already avoid certain things, it doesn't really help you figure out what you need. So it kind of still fits you into that box. Like, are you trying to do a keto diet? Are you, trying to do low oxalates? So it's like you already have to know that in order to use the app. So, that's kind of that's the hard part, right? If you already know it, it's kind of easier to control. It's trying to find that puzzle piece.
Okay, thank you. And going back to your primary business, we have an audience member who has a background in technology commercialization and experience in your vertical. He has a couple of questions. Who are your biggest competitors and what do you provide that the competition is lacking?
Oh, well, there's a lot of consultants out there. And so I try, we're all independents. And so I get actually a lot of work through consultants I've worked with in the past. So I kind of like to see them as coworkers. Probably, there are established larger consultant consortiums. However, if you're the client, really the only benefit you get is like a single invoice, but you're actually paying for all of those services a lot more. And then I find that since they're larger, then they have to meet internally still in order to get anything done. So you're losing that quickness. And so then if you're doing it one-on-one, you can really pinpoint, exactly what independent consultants you want to work with rather than whoever's on their team.
Okay, great. And revisiting the app once again, is everyone equally susceptible to diet and automatic feedback?
They should be if that's their trigger, and that's all part of it is trying to find. It could also be for them, and that would be the harder part, but there are environmental considerations, right? Some people might be triggered by mold, right? Mold is a known mast cell activator. And so that, it just kind of depends more for that person, but food sensitivities or allergies are quite common with folks. Celiac disease is 1% of the population, for example. They estimate that people with mast cell activation is between 10 to 17% of the population. So it's quite a good number of folks out there. And I think that's why you see so many different diets out there, because everyone's a little individualized, and then you end up gravitating to something that works for you.
Okay. If you were able to secure more funding, what would that cover?
Oh, that's great. So that would help cover a lot on the machine learning part. So developing out the app and the algorithm that we would need in order to feed into it. Then you'd have to build that on both an Android and iOS platform. So, you know, depending on how those funds came in, it might be that we prioritize one over the other. And then advertising.
Okay, great answer. Is the app a niche market? Do you think it's a niche?
I mean, it's a specialized, so I guess you could say it's a niche. Sometimes I use those terms interchangeably, but I think it's a pretty significant portion of folks, you know, especially as we all are living longer. People are, you know, chemists like myself are manipulating with food sources, you know, so I think people are just getting more aware, and they're also getting messed with a little bit too. So.
Okay, very interesting. I think that looks like that's all the questions we have for now. So thank you very much for your great presentation.
All right. I think I already made you the presenter, right?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Good luck, Ashley.
So, yeah, I will now introduce our next presenter, Ashley Hayden. She received the Astronaut Scholarship in 2018 while studying biology at Texas A&M University and has served on the ASF Strategic Planning Committee and now on the Program Committee. She is currently a neuroscience PhD student at Baylor College of Medicine, where she studies learning and memory. And as if being a full-time PhD student isn't enough work, she joined American Dreammakers in April of this year to get help in developing her own company, Colors, which is a little bit different than her neuroscience studies. And I'll let her tell you all about it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lisa.
And you're now the host.
Perfect. Okay. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that really kind introduction. Today, I'm going to be telling you all about my company that is currently under development, which, like Lisa said, is Color STEMs, or Color Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. And so this company kind of has two different prongs to it. So the first is to increase STEM accessibility. And I'm hoping to do this by designing logos for STEM-based companies in order to both increase their branding and marketability, as well as to help them reach a more broader accessible audience. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. And then the second aspect of my company is STEM outreach and awareness. So I'm hoping to access both younger generations as well as older through coloring books and art in order to help increase awareness of different STEM professions and different historical figures in science. And a little bit more about me before I get into those. So like Lisa said, I received the Astronaut Scholarship in 2018 when I was attending Texas A&M University. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Biology with honors, and there I studied monarch butterfly migration and was lucky enough to learn a bunch of different biological techniques. I'm currently pursuing a PhD in neuroscience at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas, where, like Lisa said, I studied learning and memory. And overall, I have about 4.5 years of research experience underneath my belt at this point. But despite that, I kind of like to think of myself as an artist by training and a scientist by profession. So I have actually been doing art for much longer than I've been a scientist. I've been an art educator for over 12 years, and I've been in the logo design sector for 6 years, but I have not actually made it a marketable skill until recently. And so my overall goal with this company is to integrate science or STEM and, oh gosh, sorry about that. I don't know why that's doing that. My overall goal with this company is to integrate science and art in order to increase STEM awareness and show people that they're not mutually exclusive ideas. And so why would you want to get a logo redesign or get a logo in general for your company? So first of all, a recognizable logo is key to company success. So logos grab attention. So potential clients take only about 2 seconds to judge if they're going to use a company's services. And within those 2 seconds, they can see your logo, any kind of branding you have, and probably the front page of your website. And it's going to take that long with that little information for a client to decide if they're going to use your services. So having decent branding is extremely important. Second of all, it helps you build brand identity. So customers will instinctively look for company branding in everything that you put out. And so if you don't have these markers, customers may not recognize that something is from you and your company, or they may dismiss it. Thirdly, good branding actually can increase your company's revenue. So by presenting your branding consistently across platforms, it can actually increase your revenue by up to 23%, according to Forbes. And fourthly, you can actually save on expenses by having decent branding. So brands with poor branding tend to pay up to 10% higher salaries than those that have good branding. And so overall, by having a really good company logo, you can decrease your costs and increase your revenue while reaching your target audience more effectively. So why would you even use ColorStem? What makes us unique? Well, first of all, I use creativity and science in my logos. So a lot of the time when artists are designing logos, they'll just use this kind of internal gut that we have as to whether a design works or not. But with me, I not only have curated that gut feeling over time, but I also use design, marketing, and neuroscience principles in my logos to make sure that your logo is the most effective that it can be for your business. Secondly, I ensure that my clients have multiple file formats for whatever they need. So sometimes if you're using a file format that isn't the best, your logo can go blurry if you blow it up, or you might run into other problems. So I make sure that all that's solved for you. Thirdly, I pride myself on customer satisfaction. So I remain flexible to any kind of different directional changes you have or any ideas you have anytime during the design process. Even if we're close to the end and suddenly you get an epiphany, we're going to run with it. Fourthly, I don't believe in royalties. So if you buy your logo from me and start distributing it, I don't make any profit off of that whatsoever. So you have full copyright access to your logo once it's in your hands. And finally, I save your files so you will never lose a logo to a computer crash or an email hack or whatever. I got you covered. And so here's a little bit of a portfolio of my previous work, and you can see more of this at colorstems.com. And I've been fortunate to work with a wide variety of different STEM companies. And so now I want to tell you a little bit about my outreach portion of my company, which I'm doing with coloring books. And so I think most of us here know that the next generation is what's going to build science in the future. They're going to be how we avoid pandemics, how we can conquer, the kind of challenges we're facing right now. And I know for me, I was exposed to STEM at a young age, but I didn't actually realize I could go into a career in science until my sophomore year of college. So it's really important to me to advocate for STEM to the broader public, as well as educate both younger and older students about what careers in science they can go into, and educate them about the history of science. So the goal for my coloring books is to recognize influential persons in STEM, whether they're famous or not, in a variety of fields, whether it be mathematics, physics, biology, chemistry, anything. I want to tell true stories about each person. So the front of the coloring book page will be, the coloring book page, but the back side will actually be a little autobiographical snippet about each individual. So students can actually learn more about these individuals that they're coloring as they do so. And thirdly, I want to represent all different types of scientists. I don't want to just focus on one sector. I don't want to focus on just famous scientists or just historical scientists. I want to focus on everyone if I can. And so here are some examples of my coloring book pages so far. I have more than this currently in the works. And so you'll notice I tend to go for more complex images, and that's because this allows appeal to both younger children who don't necessarily care if they're complex, to adults who generally like more complex coloring book pages. And so I have 4 different ideas for distribution of these coloring books. So the first is scientific conferences once they actually become a thing again. So a lot of conferences will have sectors where they sell art or they sell books. So I would really like to get this out there into that market. Secondly, I would love to take this into schools and give it as an educational tool for teachers, especially in times where students, sorry about that, I don't know why I keep slipping, especially in a time where students individually working on coloring book pages is a really good idea. Thirdly, I would love to have people be able to buy this online and print it out for themselves. And fourthly, any word of mouth would also be great, or people just being able to hand these out at book fairs or things like that. And so finally, I want to give a huge thank you to some critical people involved in American Dreammakers who have been able to help me with my own company. So the first is Lisa Stott, who's given me the confidence to actually go after this company and become an entrepreneur. She was the one I first went to about this idea and has been really monumental in helping me get it off the ground. Secondly, I want to thank Nicole Stott, who Lisa put me into contact with. She was actually the first astronaut to ever paint in space. And she was really kind and helped me find some artistic connections and helped me get into contact with some people that do something really similar to my field. And finally, Jessica Blomberg, who you just heard from, she was kind enough to give me a chance and let me design her company logo. And I really appreciated her business. And she's also been really helpful with letting me practice this presentation in front of her, for example. She's great. And so finally, I just want to let y'all know if you have any logo requests or would like to hear about coloring book updates, you can go to my website, colorstems.com. And as an Astronaut Scholar, I really appreciate your support. And so finally, some of my requests. Again, I'm a first-time entrepreneur, so any kind of guidance you could have on distributing or copywriting my services would be greatly appreciated. Any kind of understanding of profit margins, and for those that have experience starting their own companies during PhDs, I would love some ideas on how to actually get this off the ground, what kind of funding you found, etc. And then finally, this is my first business pitch ever, so if any of you have any critiques, I would really appreciate that as well. Thank you all so much.
Okay, Ashley, thank you so much for that great presentation. If you can unshare your screen, that's great. Thank you. We have a few questions coming in. Why not make coloring books for your logo clients and help promote the business?
That is actually something I've considered and is something I would love to offer. It's just I feel like I need to actually figure out the mechanics of how to distribute a coloring book in general before I offer it. But if someone were to come to me with that idea, I would absolutely love to design a coloring book for any kind of company. And in fact, I want to do one for ASF eventually.
Oh, that would be fun. And by the way, thank you for the nice comments. I appreciated that.
Oh, no problem.
Next question. So how are you going to get this to the next level? Why are you pursuing a PhD when your idea is more business? To do this fully and effectively, it's going to take a lot of hustling. And you're the second example of someone starting a business while working on a PhD in this.
No, you are definitely correct on that. So one of the main reasons I started this business in the first place is because I was really missing the creative aspect of myself in my PhD. I mean, obviously we have to be immensely creative as scientists, but I missed doing artwork and, you know, having this kind of outlet. So one of my kind of pursuits that I've really enjoyed has been scientific communication. And it's only been as I've started to get further into my PhD that I've been able to realize that. So in the future, I'd love to go into a career as scientific communicator, and this is just a way for me to foster that now while I'm in my PhD. But of course, this is going to take some time, and I'm just going to have to balance it like several others here have. And I think one of the great aspects of being in a PhD is that we do have some time flexibility.
Okay, and I think this is related, but we'll see if you have any other comments on it. Are you planning on focusing fully on this after you graduate, or continue blending this company with your research in neuroscience?
I would say I'll probably end up focusing on this more as my PhD does progress. But for right now, I think it's really important to have that scientific background to where not only can I actually understand what my clients are telling me, because I've had the fortune of working with an AI client recently, and it's been really nice that we can speak the same language since we're both scientists, and I can actually help him more acutely design a logo that fits his needs versus someone else who doesn't know anything about AI. So I'm going to really enjoy my neuroscience pursuits, and I think they're going to end up helping me more down the line than I expect.
Okay, great. I think that let's see, here comes another question. It says, I love that you've embraced both sides of your personality and they combine your PhD with the art as logo, as the logo is the science of marketing. This person doesn't think you need to choose. You can do both. Maybe you can get into marketing. That wasn't a question, just a nice comment.
I appreciate the confidence. I appreciate it.
Here's a good one. Do you get much sleep?
Oh, of course not. No. Do any of us in this call get sleep? We're all way too overachieving.
All right, great. Everyone, thank you for the questions. And Ashley, thank you for the very interesting presentation.
Perfect. Thank you all so much.
So now I will introduce our next speaker, which is Marco Zachary. He is a biomedical engineering and computer science senior at the University of Minnesota, who received the Astronaut Scholarship in 2020 and is now developing a novel application to passively monitor motor and cognitive symptoms of Parkinson's disease and essential tremor. With that, let's see. I will make Marcos the host. Oh, give me a minute. That function is not. Ashley, did you return the host duties to me?
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay. All right, great. Now I can make Marcos the host.
All right.
And Marcos, you got it.
Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
All right, so hi, my name is Marco Zachary, and today I will be talking about a project that I've been developing this year and hope to market one day, and it is the passive monitoring and computationally augmented assessment of motor and cognitive symptoms in Parkinson's disease. Just some acknowledgements off the bat. I'd like to thank the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, who's been helping me a lot financially, especially this year, and also connected me to amazing people like Tonya Custis, who is my ASF mentor. And I would also like to thank my PI, Dr. Johnson, and Dominic, who is my partner on this project. And we're doing our honors thesis together. So some background. Parkinson's disease is a neurodegenerative disorder that affects predominantly dopamine-producing neurons in a specific area of the brain called the substantia nigra. And it's important to know that it could have a unique clinical presentation among different individuals. And as you can see to the right here on the picture, here are some of the symptoms, which include bradykinesia, which is the slowness of movement and is the cardinal symptom of PD. Also, there's vocal symptoms, rigidity, tremors, gait difficulties, dystonia, which is repetitive muscle movements. And there's also, so these are all motor skill symptoms. There's also non-motor skill symptoms, which include mental and behavioral issues, sense of smell, sweating, GI issues, and pain. And I bolded this here, and these all worsen with emotional stress, and I'm going to focus on that in my product. So I thought it would be important to note for now. Some clinician tools that are used are the UPDRS scale and the Hone and Yar scale. So currently, a Parkinson's disease patient would go to a PD specialist for his checkup, and the PD specialist would use one of these scales to quantify the patient's stage of PT. And in this test, they look at both motor and motor skill symptoms and non-motor skill symptoms, as seen here. Some treatment options. First off, there's no cure as of yet, but some treatment options that are popular include levodopa, which acts as a replacement for dopamine, and deep brain stimulation, which relies on electric stimuli to alleviate the symptoms. Okay, so what is the clinical need that I'm tackling here? So first, I'd like to go over some of the current limitations that exist with the scales the physicians use. First, you have the subjectivity of these scales. Basically, these tests consist of a survey and a motor examination. Sure, a PD specialist is trained to empirically evaluate the severity of a patient's PD, but these tests are highly subjective and is influenced heavily by recall bias. It's also very time consuming. The tests could take up to hours, and a lot of times what patients feel, and something that I will focus on, is this guinea pig stigma, where the patients feel like they're just going through a lot of examination with and nothing is really changing because there's no cure. Also, another important aspect is the low supply of PD specialists. I've been observing a bunch of clinical trials, and what I'm seeing is that patients are booked for their appointments 6 months apart to a year. And there's really no way to monitor short-term state after the intervention. So with deep brain stimulation or levodopa treatment, they have effects that could set in right away. You know, they could set in after hours, days, or weeks, but there's really no way to monitor that short-term state after the intervention. And as with every in-clinic testing, most meaningful events happen outside of the clinic. So current solutions right now, there's this popular word now, telemedicine, that's been popular with the advent of COVID. And it basically refers to the distribution of health-related services via electronic information. And it just allows for long distance patient and clinician contact. So how are innovators dealing with the clinical need that I described in the previous slide? Well, they're using smartphones. And smartphones nowadays is embedded with inertial motion unit hardware and this is for every smartphone, that can acquire accelerometer and gyroscopic data. They also have microphone sensors, camera sensors, and all this can give you a lot of important information using just your smartphone, which mostly everyone has. And these sensors are being utilized in an active way using machine learning algorithms to assess a patient's Parkinson's severity. And some of the apps that are out there right now is Parkinson's Life Kit and Cloud UPDRS. And they both operate under the same method, which is active monitoring. Basically, you have to go on the app as a PD patient. Then you would say, okay, I'm going to do this test, walking test. And as you can see here on the bottom left, it says for this activity, you will walk continuously for 60 seconds and then be asked to stand still for 30 seconds. And it uses the sensors that I described along with machine learning to give you useful statistics. And basically, it's a pseudo UPDRS score that a physician or a patient can look at. And although this is useful, it doesn't really solve the problem I bolded earlier, which is about the mental and behavioral issues that exist with PD. Because studies show again that the patient feels that guinea pig stigma and refuses to do these tests on their phone. So this is where my role in my honors thesis comes in. And basically what I'm doing is that I'm offering a passive way, a passive component, and I'm focusing on developing a tool that makes this process passive. This uses two types of supervised data collection. First, I'm using machine learning algorithms such as artificial neural networks to identify the environment the phone is in. And as seen in the bottom right, using this technology, I can determine where the phone is in space without the patient going on their phone. So I can know if you're carrying the phone in your hand, putting it in your pocket, in a suitcase, or in a cart, or on your bed. I can use the accelerometer and gyroscopic data that exist that I can acquire using the hardware inside the phone to monitor the environment. And after I identify that environment, I can begin acquiring data about the features that I'm showing here, and analyze them again using ML. And the features that I'm looking at is gait. So that's basically how the patient is walking, tremor, voice, rigidity, sleep, journal log. So in this case, for example, with gait, if I determine that that the phone is inside the pocket, then I will begin looking at gait. If I determine the phone is in the patient's hand, then you can look at both tremor and rigidity. If the patient is on the phone, for example, with a friend, then you can look at features such as voice, or if you have the phone next to you and the phone recognizes certain vibrations that exist when you put the phone next to your head while you sleep, then I can look at sleep features that also are implicated in Parkinson's disease. And then also I'll have one active component journal log as also an option. But essentially what I'm doing here is eliminating all the active components that exist in the past apps and making this app truly passive, where the patient does not have to really go on this app and do testing and feel this guinea pig stigma that is associated with it. So here's a design flow of kind of the process. Basically, you have the inertial motion unit, which again, I said was the accelerometer and the gyroscope. You have the microphone and screen press log. So that's basically, let's say you are texting someone, then I can use how long you have pressed down on a phone while you're typing, and that provides important information about tremor and rigidity as well. So you retrieve all this data, you figure out whether it's an active process or figure out the context. So the environment, ego motion awareness is basically looking at where this phone is in the environment, and it provides you a location context. Then once you know where this phone is, this data is transmitted to the server, and the server then organizes the data into gait, tremor, voice, rigidity, sleep, journal log. So these are all the features that do exist within the UPDRS score and physicians would normally look at in a clinical setting. And I extract these features and do some machine learning on them to provide a way to represent that UPDRS scale. And using that, I can, I'll have a patient end GUI and a clinician end GUI. So this is a way for the patient to see where they're at with their Parkinson's disease. And this is for the clinicians to see where the patients are and monitor their health electronically. And also there's this feature of response regression flagging that I'd like to highlight. So this, if it sees, for example, that the patient's gait is looking bad and it surpassed a certain threshold, then I'll flag that, and then the physician has the option to either change the DBS settings or give a different dosage of levodopa and try to help the patient out that way. For future work, basically I'm training the model on more data, refining the analysis, doing a lot of testing right now, functional testing, usability testing, compatibility testing, and security testing. And the security testing is especially important because of I am acquiring a lot of information from the phone, and I have to make sure that the patient privacy is protected. And right now I am working on setting up an IRB with Professor Johnson and my partner, so I can do more formal testing on this app with actual Parkinson's disease patients. And currently I'm filing a provisional patent for the method used. Yeah, I don't really have that much of business background, but one day I hope to market this because I think nothing like it exists out there, and it'd be a very useful thing for PD patients. And I would love, any sort of input on where to go next, or yeah. And how do I?
Okay, is that the conclusion of your presentation, Marcos?
Yeah, just questions. I'm trying to figure out how to make you host.
Okay.
There
While
we
you're
go.
figuring that out, I will.
There we go.
Okay. And yeah, you can, yeah, there you go. Perfect. So there are some questions that have come in. Can this also be used for Alzheimer's? And can it be integrated with an Apple Watch? The thought from the person who asked the question is you could then patch into existing platforms. Have you thought of those areas?
Yes, actually. So not really with the Alzheimer's, but with the Apple Watch, and there's actually this thing called an Aura Ring too, that NBA players have been using that also acquires the same data, and we are thinking of actually using that Aura Ring because it's simple. You can just wear it all the time, and it would provide the same sort of deal. Right now, I'm working on developing the app just because it's something that's accessible and I can do testing on. But in the future, certainly, I would love to test out things like that.
Okay. Another question. Have you talked to physicians about this app? What do they say about it? And how big do you think the market is?
I think the market is big. I've talked to we're working with a neurosurgeon right now to set up the IRB, and they see potential in it. I'm also in contact with the VP of IT at United Health Group. So insurance companies would love to have something like this because it saves them money, and so the market for it is there, definitely. I just haven't really marketed it or thought about it yet, but thought this would be a great opportunity to get my mind set into that.
And can you please tell our audience what IRB stands for?
It stands for something review board. Let's see, what is it? I'm not sure what the I stands for.
Independent, perhaps?
Maybe it's independent. Or, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, two related questions here. Again, from Institutional Review Board, thank you. From Scott Pleasance, he says, we have a company in Virginia that was seated in our accelerator that is building sensors for stroke patients, but has many other use cases. If you would like to be connected, please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. Who is this?
Scott Pleasance, thank you for that offer, Scott, and you can get in touch with him through the ASF office after this event.
Absolutely, I would love that.
Wonderful. Laura Churchley also asked, how do we get in touch with you? There's two ways, through the ASF office, but Marcos, if you would like to give an email or another piece of contact information, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, I can give my phone number and email. I don't know how to do that on the Q&A, but can I just drop it in the chat and you would be able to share it with the audience, or?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or here, let's see if I just do.
I know I can type an answer. I'm not sure if you can.
Type an answer, but I don't know if everyone can see the answer. So. Okay, I'll just do that. I put it in the chat. I probably should have put my contact information on the slide. Sorry. This is my first time doing something like this.
That's okay. I'm going to send it right now to all panelists and all attendees, just in case you didn't.
Awesome.
All right, so for anyone who's interested, go to the chat box and you should see Marcos's email address and phone number. And again, if you don't get that, if you don't write it down, you can contact the ASF office to get in touch with him after. Okay, looks like, I believe that is all the questions.
Awesome.
So thank you very much for that fascinating presentation. And when it becomes available for PD patients, I'd like to put you in touch with a close relative of mine who
I would love that.
probably be an anxious participant.
Yes.
So with that, I would like to bring on our next presenter, Bill Green. Bill is an optical engineer for LED lighting at LuxTech in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is the co-founder of the Philly Moon Men, an urban astronomy outreach initiative. He received the Astronaut Scholarship at the University of Rochester in 2014 and 2015. And with that, Bill, I will make you the host, and you may take it away.
Great, looks good. Good evening, everyone. I just want to ask, can you hear me? Can you see what I have to present?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, let's get started here. Okay, so I want to talk to you today about an initiative called the Philly Moon Men and how we are reconnecting light-polluted cities to the night sky. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you to ASF, Caroline, Lisa, Nicole, Sabrina, Justine, and everyone behind the scenes that gives scholars like us opportunities to share our work at events like these. So thank you. So we're going to get started with the story of John Dobson here, right, to talk about what is sidewalk astronomy. And there's no mystery to it. Sidewalk astronomy is the idea that you can bring your telescope out to your street corner, right outside your home, and set it up to show people who pass by just what the universe looks like. John Dobson is the person who was widely credited with inventing sidewalk astronomy. He was a Berkeley chemist and then Hindu monk who was tasked with the goal of upping the astronomy knowledge of the monastery that he practiced in. So he got together a bunch of garden equipment and cardboard and built his own telescope out of essentially spare parts. And once he started showing people what the moon looked like through this telescope, he became absolutely obsessed with people's reactions and sharing this with a wider community. He went on to actually get kicked out of the monastery he was practicing at. I suppose they had trouble believing this is what he was sneaking away from to do at night. But it's estimated that throughout his lifetime, he showed over 1 million people the view through his telescope and through other initiatives that he founded. So that is what we are doing in Philadelphia as the Philly Moon Men. We are bringing our telescopes out into the urban setting and sharing the view and sharing our knowledge with whoever walks by and wants to take a look. We know that telescopes are instruments for scientific discovery. What I hope to convince you of is that telescopes are also instruments for social impact. So we focus on telescopes as creating three target goals. That's grassroots science outreach, public space making, and light pollution advocacy. So we are bringing science to the streets. That's why this is grassroots. That's why it's as easy as doing it yourself. We are reaching an audience that from all age groups and demographics that museums and other institutions for science outreach have difficulty reaching. It's a bold claim. One of the reasons that I know we can make it is because most of the people that we've met through this project have never seen the moon up close before. And we find that is actually really common in urban settings. And what telescopes allow us to address is this issue of access to dark skies in cities. We've met plenty of people that as adults, they've never left the Philadelphia city limits in their entire life. So they've never had a chance to see really the night sky that's up there. And so this is something that really needs to be shared. One thing that I like to think about is the discovery of Neptune. The planet Neptune was discovered in Berlin city center. And in just one orbit around the sun, we've created electric lighting. And if you go to that spot in Berlin, you can barely see Saturn. So for most people living on Earth today, the evidence that we live in a solar system and the evidence that we live in this grand universe is actually disappearing due to the proliferation of electric lighting. So it's pretty easy to see how this is a science outreach project, but maybe a little more work to do to convince you that this can also create and invigorate public spaces. So Jane Jacobs, author of Death and Life of Great American Cities, coined this term called eyes on the street. And basically what this means is what makes public spaces feel safe and inviting. It's not bright lighting, it's not necessarily cameras or anything like this. You feel safe when other people are around. And this is why when you're walking around in the city, you might feel safer walking down the bar and restaurant district than you would down a deserted, lonely alleyway. And so this is a very democratic process of taking our knowledge, taking our passion to the sidewalk and just sort of setting up and leaving this impression of what we can bring to the public realm. So in this picture, you can see the corner of 4th and South, one of our favorite spots to set up. And this is a picture of what used to be a Starbucks and what is now to this day a vacant storefront. So from the perspective of a business owner, vacant storefronts are known to lower property values. They're believed to attract crime. And what I want to challenge you guys to think about is how can these places be reinvented just by the citizens of a city? Can we turn this vacant street corner into an astronomy hub? And the answer is yes, we can, right? There isn't anything to it besides a telescope, right? We bring it out there, we invite people to take a look, and we answer their questions. And often people end up hanging out, staying for the entire night, question after question. People that never even knew that they had a passion for astronomy, keep on asking questions. And there's a reason that we're setting up in the bar and restaurant district instead of in front of the museums. It's to dose people with science where they least expect it. And a lot of people that had no idea that you could even see the night sky in the city have become some of our most dedicated fans, which is really meaningful to me. But what I want you to take away from this is that telescopes seed sidewalks with people, inviting more to join. So this idea of eyes on the street, if you give people an honest reason to be out at night, then you can create more social activity and more of this placemaking that allows neighbors and communities to interact and thrive and collaborate. So then the third goal that we try to address is light pollution advocacy, right? Once we build an awareness of astronomy in our public spaces, what can we do to bring that access to a greater population? So this is an aerial view of Philadelphia, right? If you're flying over in a plane. And what this effect is called of seeing cities from the sky is sky glow. And in terms of energy and efficiency nationwide, that is about $3 billion a year, right? Which is significant. And the way that I want to encourage you to think about this is that all of this light that you see from an airplane or from space, this is light that is supposed to be directed down at the sidewalk. So why is there enough wasted energy that you can see it from cruising altitude? The good news here is that this is 100% reversible, and it's reversible through better lighting ordinances at the city level, at the local level, and through better design of lighting fixtures that respect the night rhythm. So it's no mystery that the East Coast is one of the most lighted, polluted places on Earth. And an interesting fact that I've learned recently is that light pollution is actually outpacing the rate of population growth almost everywhere. And that, to me, speaks to this being a design problem, a problem of inventing and asking for better lighting in our public spaces. So we want to activate this interest in public lighting with astronomy. And there's a lot at stake here, right? With more than half Earth's population living in cities, who will have a chance to see the universe as it really looks like? It's really different. It's a much different place than what we're used to on Earth once you take a closer look. If for you personally, sitting where you are right now, if you think about how far you would have to drive to experience a truly dark night sky, 150 years ago today, there was no such thing as having to travel to a dark night sky. You could go outside where you're sitting right now and look up to see the Milky Way. And in just 2 or 3 generations, that experience has almost entirely disappeared for the human race. So we're talking about what telescopes can do for public spaces, and I don't need to mention another thing that has completely changed the way that we think of public spaces. So the question is, what do you do to adapt? And that is why we launched our initiative called Scope and Sketch. Scope and Sketch is a modification of sidewalk astronomy, where we actually feed the view from our telescope onto a battery-powered TV. And then to make the experience more interactive, we hired an artist who helps us look at the craters and the mountains on the moon, interpret the shades of their color, and actually render that onto a page. So we are interacting with these scientific phenomena the same way the original astronomers did, by sketching it on pen and paper. Now, I can't take complete credit for this, but this is one of our students' work from our debut class. And this to me is just wonderful. It's an absolute blend of art and science in a public space, in a pop-up fashion. And this is something that we want to do more of. I think that we can get more telescopes on more street corners and encourage this at a local level, anywhere that people have an interest in astronomy. Our goal is to invigorate, inspire, and give people the equipment they need to do this themselves. We have partnered with people all over our community. Some of the most exciting work that we've gotten into over the years has been when people have approached us and had an idea for how we fit into their mission. So we've partnered with a lot of institutions over the years that way. Always important to share your milestones. So we were just recently featured on ABC as part of an arts and science festival we worked on called Da Vinci Fest. And that was with the Da Vinci Art Alliance, one of the partners you just saw on the page above. And we are looking for ways to grow this mission and reach more people. The thing that I want you to take away is that astronomy is what's called a graying hobby. All of my mentors in astronomy are getting older. This picture here is me with Herman Hine. He was Baltimore's sidewalk astronomer, setting up in the Inner Harbor for 31 years, retiring at the age of 88. And here we are pictured together where he was actually handing down his telescope to the Philly moon men. So passing the torch, so to speak. But we need to get more telescopes on more street corners, have this happening in more neighborhoods, and encourage social impact through astronomy. So if you have an idea on how we can collaborate, please feel free to reach out. We're looking for ways to grow our reach. We're looking for advice on how to flesh out our mission. And we will e-visit your classroom. Something we've been doing a lot lately is getting on Zoom with teachers and students, talking a little bit about light pollution like I have here today, talking a little bit about what you can see from your city. So, you know, what I want to close on is if you have a passion, you know, that you've been working on, maybe there is a way to get that out onto the sidewalk too, and do science in a very democratic way. So thank you for your time, and I'm really excited to hear your questions. Thank you.
Okay, Bill, whenever you're ready, you can unshare your screen and we will start. There's at least one question, probably some more coming in. So the question is, what is your go-to market strategy? Since you're talking about storefront space, how do you plan to generate revenue?
Sure. So one of the things that we did to generate revenue was to put out a tip jar. You know, that seems maybe a little too grassroots, but believe it or not, we've made as much as $150 hustling in a single night. And I think that getting in front of the right audiences, especially now setting up with communities where we could solicit, you know, a $5 or $10 donation from, you know, a few different people in terms of more planned events. On the side of Scope and Sketch, we hope to offer that class, you know, on a sliding scale to help with access, but hopefully for as much as $50 per head for a two-hour session. So I think there are some ways to generate revenue, but the most important thing for us has always been just getting out on the sidewalk and, you know, doing the hands and mouth astronomy outreach. So at this time, we're really more focused on growing our audience.
Okay, do you have any thoughts on expanding this to other cities or setting up a system to educate other people on how they can start their own grassroots campaigns?
Sure. I'm open to ideas of what that could look like. I've been making contact with sidewalk astronomers all over the country. And what I find is that they often get a few features in their local news, but there's no unified network of astronomers that encourage this public outreach. What you'll find a lot in the hobby is that people have very nice equipment, and they spend a lot of time driving that out to very isolated places to do astronomy with. You know, astrophotography, taking pictures of nebulas in faraway places. But if there was some way to get a call to action out there to encourage astronomers to return to the cities and set up on their sidewalks, you know, I would invite that. Maybe that could look like a forum. Maybe that would look like some kind of, you know, Facebook group even. Is a very simple way to get that started. Yeah.
Okay. One of the attendees asked, have you considered NEA funding?
No, I actually haven't heard of that. So it's something I'd love to learn more about.
The person submitted that as an anonymous attendee. So if you can get in touch with Bill through the ASF office, that would be great afterwards. So another person asked, how does a sponsor help? Do you have a PayPal open fund or something else?
Sure, we have a GoFundMe that is a little old at this point, but funds that we do take in, we use to purchase more equipment and print materials that we can distribute whenever we do our sidewalk pop-up.
Okay. Here's a tip for you. Well, the question was, are you working with any of the business development groups in your area? There is Dream Adventures, among many others. I would recommend meeting with one of these groups.
So I'm going to go ahead and write down Dream It. I was in contact with a venture cafe, so a weekly meeting of entrepreneurs. What I personally found is that a lot of my professional networks and a lot of my tried and true ways of networking have kind of been on pause since the beginning of the pandemic. So if anyone is out there, getting into Zoom webinars like these and still finding ways to make valuable connections, that's something I'm looking for advice on too.
A person asked, do you have a lot of people who return to your telescope nightly, or do you mostly cater to passersby?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have people that come out every time we send a ping on social media. We're fairly well known in our neighborhood, and we try to always have something new to show people. There's a different phase of the moon every night, so totally different craters are visible. And actually, after funny story, after something like 3 or 4 months of not setting up on the sidewalk, we set up our television one night to give it a test drive, and these two people, they drove past in their Escalade, and they actually found a parking spot to come walk back, and they said, "Hey, remember us, remember us?" And yeah, they had seen us before, and they recognized that there were two brothers out on the sidewalk with their telescopes, and they wanted to come take another look all this time later.
Excellent. Let's see, we've got a comment and a question. Someone suggested you get the Philly Moon Men on LinkedIn if you're not already. And then someone asked, isn't this something ASF would fund? Well, I can answer that one. As I mentioned at the beginning, when we came up with American Dreammakers, we decided that ASF would not be providing funding for new ventures because it's outside of our mission. But we are definitely providing as much support as we can in other forms to Bill and the other entrepreneurs.
Yeah, certainly opportunities like this just to speak and share and develop our ideas are so valuable.
And it looks like, I think we'll make this the last question because of time. Do you have a Twitter account?
Yes, at Philly Moonmen. Plural.
At Philly Moonmen. Excellent. All right, thank you so much, Bill, for that fascinating presentation on Philly Moonmen. We really appreciate everything you're doing to promote STEM.
Thank you. All right, let's just make sure that you are the host again.
I am.
How does that look?
Looks great. So I mentioned earlier that I'm an entrepreneur, so I will be making the next presentation about my company, Quietly Making Noise, LLC. Then we originally had just one scholar after me, but we're also going to bring Aluchi back in, so she has another chance to give her presentation. She had some technical difficulties before. But first, let me give you a little overview of Quietly Making Noise. All right. So I work in acoustical consulting, and I want to talk about that business as well as my entrepreneurial journey. I'm the president and principal acoustical consultant of Quietly Making Noise, LLC, a business I started in 2002. All right, how do I advance this? There we go. So talking about an entrepreneur's journey, at age 6, I started working in my parents' accounting office. That's me in the picture there on my 6th birthday, stuffing envelopes and eventually balancing ledgers by hand. I think my parents said, here's a beautiful birthday cake for you. Now get to work, kid. So don't worry, I'm not going to recount everything that happened to me since age 6, but that early knowledge of self-employment, accounting, and taxes has served me very well. And these are skills that are not often taught to engineering majors. My early to mid-career was spent the first 10 years at one of the largest companies in the world, Westinghouse Electric Corporation. One of the things I worked on there was acoustics and noise control and vibration mitigation for power plants worldwide. Westinghouse merged with Siemens, and within a year after that, I decided to leave and join a mid-sized company where I was the executive vice president of corporate development, responsible for engineering, manufacturing, quality assurance, HR, and other functions. And I helped them grow from 55 to 135 employees. I also started 2 new business segments for that employer. So after doing that, I decided, you know, I've started businesses for others and I've led businesses for others. It's time to start my own business. And my niche area of expertise was acoustics and noise control. Doing some marketing research, I found out that there aren't many acoustical consultants in the world. In fact, our professional society, the National Council of Acoustical Consultants, has only 150 members nationwide. There are other acoustical engineers, but not independent consultants in the field. So at that time, I started that in April of 2002. I simultaneously started a partnership with 2 others called Multi-Phase Interactive Systems and Technologies, or MIST. I sold my portion of the partnership after a few years since QMN was taking off and required my focus. And QMN has taken on different forms over 18.5 years. I have grown it to up to 17 people, including full-time and part-time employees, and offered mechanical and structural engineering in addition to acoustics. I sold the mechanical and structural engineering piece after several years and decided to move back into a home office, back to being self-employed. I made this decision for a combination of reasons, some personal impacts that had happened that led me to make the decision, and it ended up being the best decision I ever made. So what do I do in acoustical consulting? Well, I provide expertise in acoustics, noise mitigation, and vibration isolation. My clients are industrial, commercial, residential, and governmental. So I've concluded that everyone has a noise problem. I design noise and vibration mitigation solutions. I do project design reviews, construction observations to make sure things are being built the way they were intended for good acoustical performance. I do noise assessment and root cause analysis of noise issues, modeling, testing, data analysis. I tell you, data analysis is one of my favorite things to do. Troubleshooting and expert witness services. I've been involved in research and development in active noise control and have special expertise in combustion instability induced low frequency noise. I've developed and utilized in-house proprietary software for acoustical modeling because since there are so few people working in my field, there's not a lot of existing software out there. A few programs have been developed, but 18 years ago, I developed my own and have validated those models through many, many projects in the field. And at one point in time, I had a friend who came to me with a traffic noise problem and he needed to have it solved. I looked through the market to find something that would solve his problem, to keep the traffic noise from coming in through his bedroom window. And there was really nothing out there that would provide enough noise control, noise reduction. So I said, well, I know how to do this. So I invented and have now patented shut-eye acoustical shutters. My 2 websites are quietlymakingnoise.com and acousticalshutters.com. I get out in the field a lot to do testing. It's essential to understand the noise source you're trying to control. So these are a number of pictures of me in a variety of places, measuring sound levels, creating sound myself. You can see in the bottom left with loudspeakers, so I can test noise reduction through partitions and things like that. And as I mentioned before, it ranges from industrial to commercial to residential applications. Some of my interesting projects have included the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts, which I've been working on for over 12 years now. It's here in Orlando, where I live, 3 theaters, plus an outdoor performance space and a jazz club. And we hope it will be finished next year. And we also hope to bring back audiences for live performances next year after the COVID crisis calms down. I've worked on VA medical centers. I mentioned active control before. And I get all kinds of interesting projects, like an attorney who was trying to install a private aircraft landing strip in a residential neighborhood. I helped him with his permitting of that project. I've worked on all-terrain vehicles, thunder speedboats, and different types of airboats. I'm the Florida expert in large truck mud bog and drag strips. An iFly indoor skydiving facility, and testing one of the quietest cooling towers in the world. I've done that for every quarter for more than 10 years. You might wonder why you have to test the quietest cooling tower in the world. It's because of its permit requirements. So I've also worked on jet fighter flyovers near a multifamily project, auto racing, speedway for another multifamily project. You can imagine living next to either one of those noise sources. And then there's those mysterious noise cases where people call me and they have some mysterious noise that they can hear, and sometimes I go to the site and I can't hear it, and I can't even detect it on my meter, but I still have to try to help them solve their problem. And I also write noise ordinances, attend public hearings on my clients' behalves, and do expert witness services. I mentioned my patented product before. I never intended to sell a product, but these are some pictures of my shut-eye acoustical shutters. That trademark name was invented by my husband. He had the great brainstorm one day. And this also, there's a graph here that shows how much noise reduction the shutters get. It's the blue line compared to a standard window, which is the red line. Every 10 decibels of noise, additional noise reduction, is perceived by the human ear to sound about half as loud. So they do a great job. There's nothing else on the market that comes close to this. So I've found the best thing about being self-employed is the flexibility. After about 15 years in business, so about 3 years ago, I started cutting back my hours purposefully to pursue philanthropic interests. I've been involved in ASF since 1990 and after graduation from Georgia Tech. I'm primarily involved in 3 other nonprofits, but I do many events and activities for others on a smaller scale. ASF, as you can tell, is my primary passion, and the creation of American Dreammakers has been a happy intersection between my professional and philanthropic lives. So we want our audience members to get involved, whether as an Astronaut Scholar participant or a supporter who joins our Innovation Corps. Together, we're launching some of the most innovative scientists and engineers in the US to create businesses that improve the world. So what's next? Well, I plan to continue consulting on a part-time basis and continue my philanthropic activities. Now, I am seeking to sell the intellectual property for shut-eye acoustical shutters. So if there's anyone on this call that is interested in that, or perhaps has some connections, I would really appreciate hearing from you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop the screen share, and I guess I'll moderate my own questions. So someone asked, what brand of noise canceling headphones do you recommend? So I haven't done a comprehensive review, but I personally have the Bose headphones and they work very well on airplanes. And I see a Go Jackets here. All right, another Georgia Tech alum here. Always glad to hear that. And let me see if there are any other questions. Oh, someone would love an example of a mysterious noise case that you solved if you have one or more about an expert witness service. There was an interesting mysterious noise case on a condominium building in Dallas that I worked on. They were $1 million condos, and that was the middle floors. The penthouse was multi-million, and a couple of famous sports stars lived there, which I can't reveal their names, but the building was built in such a way that for stacked units, you could actually hear the conversation in living rooms that were stacked one on top of another. And the mysterious thing was that the building had thick concrete floors. So there were lawsuits about this. People were trying to get out of their sales contracts, and all kinds of terrible things were going on. I came in and did noise testing with loudspeakers and measured all of the frequencies that the human ear can hear to find out how that noise was transmitting from one floor to another. It turned out, as I mentioned, this was a high rise. It was the exterior of the building was all glass, and glass window walls have aluminum mullions in them. The noise was traveling up and down the mullions, and that it was basically like an aluminum megaphone, and somebody talking at one point on that megaphone was transmitting very efficiently to the other floors. So I designed a pretty simple acoustical barrier that we were able to wrap around the mullion and then cover it up to look like it was still emollient, so we hid the acoustical materials. And so for about $500 per residence, I was able to solve this problem. You couldn't hear a thing after we did that. And the people who were trying to get out of their sales contracts were not very excited about that, but the owner and the builder were very excited to have a solution to the problem that cost about $500 per unit. And I see a question here, why do you want to get rid of your product? Well, I mentioned before that I never intended to invent a product. My primary business is consulting, and it's been a very successful business for me. I would like to, so I'm subcontracting the manufacturing of it. It's my invention, I handle the orders, but I'd really like to have someone else begin subcontracting this, and I would like to, be paid a royalty, basically. Licensing, that question just came up, that is a possibility as well. So I'd like to, I should have probably not said sell the intellectual property. I should have said I'd like to have a different arrangement for the intellectual property for that, and I'm open to a number of suggestions. I am talking to one company about a potential 50-50 partnership, but I'm not sure if that's going to work out, so I would be open to other ideas. Someone asked, have you ever pitched to residential builders or to hotel lines about the shutters? It seems that every building in New York could use your product, especially the high-end residential or historical buildings that's harder to change. Well, and yes, the answer is yes, I have pitched to builders and hotels. My biggest challenge is that I don't have time to sell it. I have other interests that are far more important to me, like my consulting business. That's really what my love, my passion, and the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation and my other charities. I've tried some sales reps with mixed success. So I would love to have, another potential for having another arrangement would be to get some marketing help that I don't have to spend time on myself other than overseeing. Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your attention. And I am going to introduce our next presenter, Michael Marksbury. Another chance to come back in with her presentation, and hopefully there won't be any technology issues this time. So with this, Michael, I need you to make me the host again. Hope you're still on.
Yeah, I'm still here. More. How do I do that, Lisa?
Actually, you can go ahead and make Oluchi the host. There should be 3 dots above her. If you hover over her picture, click on the 3 dots and then go down and click make
Done.
host. Thank you. Oluchi, you should be the host. You can unmute and start whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. It's not an online conference if there's not a little bit of technical difficulties, right? So back on to the presentation. Today I'll be talking about how Africa could be the next Bitcoin. The African continent is coming to be at the forefront of the tech market. And a little bit about myself going in is that I'm Oluchi Chukwuneri, a senior computer science student at North Carolina A&T. I'm in a VC fellowship where I'm learning about the venture capital space from both the investor standpoint as well as the entrepreneur perspective. Going into this, some of the goals of the session today is providing more clarity on the African startup ecosystem, as well as specifically the Nigerian economy development. Like I said before, it's not a tech conference without a little bit of technical difficulties. So going into today's agenda, we're doing a post check on Africa, the continent, and then talking about the startup growth time. And then I'll be diving into my nonprofit and how it coincides with growing Nigeria's economy. So now I'm a post check on Africa as a continent. So 6 out of 10 of the fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. Many African entrepreneurs and investors are solving real problems and creating jobs, as well as flourishing the society within the continent, while all taking away a huge return. And a big part of this is the key players to a lot of the growth within the African continent has been the youth. So a big thanks to the large and growing population of the continent has to do with the young and ambitious, entrepreneurial-minded youth. So going into that is that they're investing in the opportunity, especially waiting to be discovered. So now taking a deeper dive into Nigeria and specifically Lagos, is that a lot of young entrepreneurs are developing business ideas and putting together their first startups. So they're starting and really bootstrapping and showcasing amongst the talents that reside within Nigeria. And it's been exciting to see the extraordinary capabilities of the youth within the continent. Now, a big part of VC has been both the emotional aspect and then the numbers. It's a big numbers game to make sure that you're getting a return on your investment, and then also being able to carry some of that return back to your fund. So let's dive into some of the numbers, and then later on we'll type into some of the emotional game. So Nigeria is one of the top 3 countries driving in the growth of technology in West Africa and the whole continent. The city of Lagos has been titled even to be the Yakuban Valley. So what we're talking about now is that there have been a lot of prevalent tech companies, and it's really building on to be a big tech hub. We have top companies such as Microsoft, Google, who are all starting roots within the area, and from both the Nigerian side as well as Kenya and other African countries. And then let's take a deeper dive on the millions that are growing. So as of 2008, Nigeria has attracted up to 306 million in funds for over 26 deals. So that's 306 million in just 26 deals. There's a lot of traction that has been coming into Nigeria as well as Africa as the continent in these past few years due to the self-starters such as the developers and entrepreneurs who are going in and really building the economy from the foundation up. So now that we talked a little bit about the numbers, let's see some of the current stories that are going on within the African continent. So here we have one of the most recent deals is Stripe. So a payments company has recently acquired Paystacks, so a Nigerian startup, for over 200 million, and is continuing to expand their ventures within the African continent. We also have companies IPOing, as well as venture funds like reviving and starting funds in the continent itself. So there's been a lot of growth and a lot of big changes that are going on within the continent, and then also specifically within Nigeria. So taking into, as we take a deeper dive into the tech entrepreneurship ecosystems, there's a lot of components and pieces that really bring in an ecosystem. So we spoke previously about the financial parts and some of the investments that are going into the continent. Now let's take a deeper look into some of the skills and talents. So a lot of the developers and engineers within the space are self-taught or come from non-traditional backgrounds. So they're learning these skills either through trial and error, through online resources, through books and things of that nature. And there are companies and foundations that are also helping them learn and kind of go through the process of building new developers and building new entrepreneurs within the space. And I'll be specifically talking about Genet Hope Alive, my family's nonprofit. So Hope Alive seeks to break the economic seal in Nigeria. So we're reaching out to the youth and instilling in them not only computer literacy skills, but a sense of family and hope. And we want to help them unleash some of that talent to the world. So we're building from the start and helping build their computer literacy skills, from keyboarding, typing skills, to going in software development skills such as Java programming, Android programming, and things of that nature. So now taking a deeper dive into some of our key milestones. Some of our key milestones in the past 3 or 4 years have been expanding out to various villages and communities in the area. On the picture to the extreme left, you'll see one of our classrooms where we're teaching from 18 years old to 45, 50-year-olds, some of the basics to computer literacy. So keyboarding, Java programming, and things of that nature. In the middle picture, you see some of our graduation ceremony from 2017, where we graduated over 500 youth. And then in the last picture, you see some of our graduates. So taking a deeper dive into the executive team, it's my father, Chidi Chakwaneri, and then also I. So my dad is a retired senior supervisor of Central Bank. So with his past experience and also growing up in the area, so his network being able to connect us with other villages, as well as being familiar with the more of the landscape. And then my expertise, I've been a former intern at Microsoft, Apple, as well as Google. We've been able to combine, we've been able to really grow the business and expand out to not only the 3 or 4 villages that we've gone before, but expanding into really building in roots on, within the Nigerian space, within the Nigeria as a whole. So taking another look at some of the things we've done, here is a few of our graduation ceremonies where again, each of our students are graduating with the skills to take on the startup space. So from the top was our graduation ceremony in 2016. The top picture was getting ready for them to receive their diplomas. And then below us is the same graduation. And then on the right-hand corner is some of the community involvement that we do. So we've been featured in a few different publications with some of the work that we've done. And then I've also, if you guys have an Android and or iPhone, you can skim through some of the photos and videos that we had of some of our most recent graduation ceremonies. So with all that said, taking a deeper dive, taking a look in some of the startup ecosystem and some of the, as well as the nonprofit organizations that happen in Nigeria and in Africa as a continent, I challenge not only the panelists, but those in the audience to expand their global perspective on what investment means and take a deeper dive into the opportunities that lie outside of America. Thank you guys. And I'm now open to questions.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks for unsharing your screen. That was fascinating. A question has come in. Did you pitch this project to those you interned with?
Oh, so I moved the host back to you, but I hope everyone can still hear and see me.
Yes.
I pitched the ideas to, when I was at Google, to a few of my mentors, and have definitely been able to get some help and resources from, like I said, mentors within the company and friends.
Great. And you told me for your introduction that you're a part of the HBCU VC Fellow program. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, so it's a year-long fellowship where HBCU students can take a deeper course on venture capital, again, from both the entrepreneurship perspective and the VC perspective. So we're networking with current VC LPs, partners, and also talking to entrepreneurs to see how we can help them and build our network. And overall, you have a community of people who are really interested in taking the venture capital space by storm and disrupting the current systems.
Fantastic. Here's another question from an audience member. Where do you see Janet Hope Alive being in 10 years?
Yeah, well, 10 years. I honestly see it expanding out past Nigeria, so going into other West African countries, or expanding into just expanding as a whole. So taking some of the, expanding in regards to some of our teachings and expanding locally to other countries.
Fantastic. Well, I learned a lot, and the work you're doing is very interesting and very important. So thank you for that. I don't see any other questions, so thank you, Lucci. And with that, I'm just going to say to wrap up, wow, thank you, Astronaut Scholars, for sharing your entrepreneurial stories and inspiring all of us to chase our own personal American dream. We have a bright future because of you and because of the supporters who tuned in today. To wrap up this first of a kind event, I would like to introduce the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation's President and CEO, Caroline Schumacher.
Hi, Lisa. This has been fantastic. You are all such an incredible group. We already know that, of course, but really just hearing all the different projects, the innovative ideas, it's astounding and incredible. So thank you so much. As Lisa mentioned, I'm president and CEO of the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and we just can't thank everyone enough for tuning in and listening and watching our first American Dreammakers Entrepreneur Showcase. This is incredible. It started out as hey, let's do a panel discussion, and any conversation with Lisa quickly evolves into something much bigger. And fortunately, she found her yes person. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So it's great. And you all are so excited about your projects, and your passion comes through in your presentations. We do want to thank each scholar for taking the time to present. We hope this was beneficial for you and for everyone attending. We want to make those connections for you. So if there's anybody you all want to get connected with, scholars to some of the attendees and attendees to scholars, just drop us a note, and we'll make sure that we get you all connected. So you should all have contact information from us through the RSVP process. But I think it's really interesting that we can showcase this other side of STEM and see what our STEM scholars can be. It's not just going into the lab for the next research. You guys are now integrating entrepreneurship into that, and that's pretty incredible. And you're all very successful, and we're so happy that ASF could facilitate this for you. Definitely, I think we all agree our well-rounded astronaut scholars never cease to amaze. And we're just going to continue to be impressed as you grow in your projects and your businesses and your next ventures. And we're here to support you along the way. You're a remarkable group. Thank you, audience members. And until next time, good night, everybody. Bye.